Yeah, I think the eminent domain issue is a big one, and has been. And you just saw that again with respect to Greenbelt and the former Attorney General of Missouri, who now works for the FBI, I believe. But he was taking action against that in large part because of the eminent domain. You also have an issue with some states. Say, for example, a state that the transmission line is going through them but isn't necessarily going to stop in their state. And so a lot of times it's difficult for the transmission owners to show these other states from whom they need approval, but it's difficult to show them there's going to be benefit to them. Now, you can make an argument, and I could easily make an argument that if Grainbelt, for example, ends up in PJM, the fact that it ends up in PJM with 2,500 megawatts of energy, that has a great impact on PJM and will benefit us, whether it stops in Illinois or not. Now, it'll obviously have a much greater impact if it stops in Illinois and there's some kind of arrangement made for the power there. But even if it just ends up in PJM or MISO, there's a benefit to Illinois ratepayers as a result of that. But that's a little bit harder to explain, and you've gotta understand how the markets work, and so I think that's an issue as well. And I also think that the yes, the RTOs have their own planning processes, but I think RTOs figuring out a way to be a little bit more welcoming of merchant transmission would be helpful as well. I also think, to your point, a lot, and because of what you mentioned about eminent domain, a lot of the transmission folks try not to use it if they can help it. That isn't always the case, and then you end up with something like Sioux Green, for example, where you're just dealing with right away that the railroad zone, and that may be difficult negotiation in itself, but it's probably not the same as acquiring from 1,000 different landowners in different places. So I think there are ways to try to address this. We've also in Illinois put out something called the Renewable Energy Access Plan, or the REAP, and we just are completing the second REAP now. And the idea behind the Renewable Energy Access Plan is to both talk about how much renewable energy we will need to meet our goals, and also how much transmission that will need to meet our goals. And then what are some of the most likely places for that? What are the places that make the most sense given where the load is going to be, and then given where the power sources are, how will that transmission work? So we're trying to give enough of a heads up as to here's some of the areas that we think are going to be needed for transmission. But any kind of siting right now, whether it's transmission, pipelines, solar arrays, wind farms, it's all difficult right now. Actually doesn't matter what you're citing. It's gotten more difficult over time.